Hello and welcome to a new book for our book club. Today we have Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential: Adventures in the Culinary Underbelly. I mentioned before in the coda of 12 Rules for Life by Dr. Jordan B. Peterson that this would be the new book that we would be discussing. I was able to get the audiobook and the ebook. I thought I was getting a regular book, but they gave me the ebook. But I only had the audiobook for like 8 days, so I had to get the thing done as fast as I could because I really wanted to hear his voice as I read it. So I read it at the same time as listening to it, and yeah, it's about 8.5 hours or something like that of an audiobook. So I had to do like an hour a day at least, so I had to get that done. So I finished the whole book, which is not normally how I film these things. I like to read the section that I'm going to be covering, revel through my annotations a little bit, just get familiar, and then discuss them so they're fresh in my mind. But this one I didn't want to miss Bourdain actually reading it. So I will do my best to recall. This is more of a pleasure read. There's not a whole lot to discuss. I mean, there's things to discuss, as honestly there's rules for life in here, and I try to apply what Peterson talks about with what Bourdain discusses, and maybe how I would have taken it from my own life, what I would have done. And he certainly lived an interesting life. I don't know if I could have gone off and done what he did. But nevertheless, we can get started. I think I'm going to go by the bigger chapters that he has. He has, Appetizer and first course. I'm combining those. Then he has second course, third course, dessert, coffee, and cigarette. So, and then there's chapters in there, but we're going to go main chapter by main chapter. So to start off with, we have Appetizer with page 1. There's a note from the chef. He's discussing how, as a chef, he has worked every holiday, never having a Friday, Saturday off. And it's a very strange way of life, very abnormal to what a lot of other people are accustomed to, and you just have to get used to the fact that you aren't going to get those days off. You have to work those days. I mean, we'll see in the future when he's working that he's got these 17-hour days, and it's all dedicated to the kitchen and 7 days a week, and it's incredible what chefs have to go through. I remember thinking, oh, maybe I want to be a chef, and my dad saying, no, you do not. If you like Christmas, if you like Thanksgiving, if you like a weekend, whatever you are accustomed to right now, all of that will be taken away, and you probably will not make a whole lot of money. I mean, you can make a decent living, but unless you become one of those celebrity chefs on TV, it's a very, very, very hard way of life, and I don't think I'm up for that. I'm up for challenges and all that, but I guess I want to be rewarded in a little bit more than just pride. Which I'm sure there's more to it than just gaining pride, but as we'll actually discuss in this, it's looking at your hands and you can see those scars, and over all the years of cooking, and when he shakes people's hands and other chefs, they know that he's been cooking for a really long time, and it is a very hard way of life. I respect them, and I don't think I could do this. I mean, I could get through it, but I don't know if I would love it as much as Bourdain did. That's a fact. Next, we have page 2, right before he introduces first course. Also, this book that I have, it's like really long pages. There's a lot of words on it. So there's only like 154 pages in this whole book, which I think is a bit shorter than a lot of the other versions out there. But that's because the pages are so long and there's so many words. But he says that Bourdain believes that good food and good eating is all about risk. It could be unpasteurized, Stilton or raw oysters or whatever it may be. It's all about risk and trying new foods. And I grew up watching his shows. I think his very first show, what's it called? It's on YouTube. Let me see here. We can find it. Anthony Bourdain show. Let's just see. Cook's Tour. A Cook's Tour, season 1 and 2. All of the episodes are on YouTube. I believe that was his first show, and then he did Parts Unknown. No, then he did No Reservations, and then Parts Unknown, something of that. But I watched all of his Cook's Tour. I've seen so many of his No Reservations and Parts Unknown, and he got me really into, well, wanting to travel, but being open to trying new foods. I recently went on a trip, a skiing trip with a friend and 6 people from China. My friend happened to know one of the people from China, and they were friends, and that person from China had 5 other friends, so we all would split the Airbnb, make it cheaper, and get to know some other people. And the nights we were there, they brought food for Chinese hot pot. They brought all these ingredients, the pot itself, and all this stuff. And I tried duck blood, pig artery, tripe, balls of meat that I don't even know what was in them, but I tried them, different kinds of fish, and it made my mom squeamish and squeal, and she didn't want to hear it. But what I learned from Bourdain and what he says here is that finding that good food is about that risk and just trying it. And he says that even when he's in the foreign countries and he knows he'll probably get sick from whatever he's about to eat, it's very disheartening and almost disrespectful to deny the food from other people. People are very proud about their food and they want to share it with them. And I know it's big in the Arab countries. It's even I think discussed in the Bible about how if you have a guest, you bring them into your home and you provide them a meal. Even if you go hungry, you offer them that meal and be very welcoming and friendly in the Arab and Middle Eastern world, and kind of all over the place. But I know it's very big there, and they live by those traditions. And to deny them that satisfaction of sharing that meal is very disheartening for them. So you always try and you accept it. And actually the stuff was pretty good. I enjoyed the duck blood, and after I said it, the guy sitting next to me said, the region I'm from in China, we have the pig is very important to us, especially the pig's blood. We eat everything from it, and pig's blood is one of my favorite dishes. It is probably my favorite dish to eat, and so I'm very happy that you tried the duck blood and that you actually liked it, because it's very important for the people in my region and my culture to eat the pig's blood, and it's very special to him. And I was able to form a deeper connection and really make him happy and cross those cultural boundaries just because I was willing to try something like duck blood. And I have Anthony Bourdain to thank for that. Okay, on to the first course chapter. This will be page 3, and Bourdain's discussing, the first time he realized that food could make him feel something, and food could be some sort of an event, and how he ate that very cold soup, and he wasn't expecting it to be cold, but in it he can remember how it felt. He remembers that exact moment, and it just brings him back all those memories. And I can't think of what my first food awakening moment was. I was a very picky eater as a kid. I think I discussed it before, but I would get tacos with just cheese. So it was pretty much a quesadilla, but I didn't want a quesadilla. It had to be a taco with just cheese. And I remember I'd go to McDonald's with my Nana, and I didn't like the word hamburger for some reason, but I liked the word cheeseburger. However, I didn't like having cheese on my burger, which is very strange because I liked tacos with cheese but no meat, but I liked burgers with just the meat and no cheese. But I refused to allow her to call it a hamburger, or else I'd throw a huge fit. And so she would have to order a cheeseburger, and she tried to tell them, don't put any cheese on the cheeseburger. They'd be like, so you want a hamburger? She's like, I can't call it that. But a lot of the times they would just give us the cheeseburger, and she would have to sit there and scrape it off just so I would eat a meal. Oh, she was a wonderful woman. But yeah, I was a very picky eater, and I think it's definitely, Bourdain was a big reason why I started getting into food, but I don't really remember my first awakening. But I think there's been many instances where I can remember my first awakening for something, and it has a visceral reaction. I'm going to move on here to page 5, where Bourdain talks about his first oyster and that feeling, and he says that it was a truly significant event, and that he had this great visceral reaction when eating it, and he remembers the saltiness and the brininess. And I remember my first oyster, and I did not enjoy it. It's exactly how he describes it, and I didn't like it. However, on the same vein from page 3 about remember my first whatever it was, I remember I hated reading as a kid. I was like, I'd rather watch a movie, that's so much better, and all this stuff. But I remember in high school, I was AP Literature senior year, we had to read a book called Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut, and I didn't know going into it that it was satirical and that there was comedy involved. So I was reading the first few pages and I was like, what is going on? This is like nonsense. And then I finally realized that it was supposed to be, funny and satirical. And I truly fell in love with that book, and that really got me into reading. And then I remember as a kid trying to read the first Harry Potter book. I probably attempted 4 times. And then one time in college, I picked it up and I read all 7 books in like 3 months. I would just sit there on the couch and read and read and read, and I loved it. I fell in love. It was absolutely wonderful. And it's funny how we remember those things, those true reactions of whatever it is that makes us fall in love with them. Okay, so here we have our next page. Page 9. He's discussing the crew at the Dreadnought, and he describes, I don't know if they're exactly his friends, but it just reminded me of rule number 3 by Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's in 12 Rules for Life. He says to make friends with people who want the best for you. And I don't think the people at the Dreadnought necessarily wanted the best for Bourdain, and it was kind of obvious by, their lifestyle was, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And while that can be fun and pleasurable, I don't think it leads to a very fulfilling life. I think Bourdain enjoyed his time out, near the Cape, but he definitely, I don't think, was very fine and happy. Why? I guess he even goes into it about how he finally brings back that large fish to share with everyone, and that's where he actually got to understanding a deeper meaning of what cooking is all about, and he truly fell in love with it. And that's when he wanted to pursue it, especially with Tyrone, which we'll get into. But yeah, it was a pleasurable time, but I don't think it was very fulfilling, especially when the people around him didn't want the best for him. Okay, and talking about that fish, we'll move on to page 13 here. Bourdain is talking about the person who helped inspire him, which was Howard on the he was a juju man, and he helped inspire him to learn how to cook with just 3 ingredients. He could make something wonderful with that striped bass. And that really got him into cooking and to falling in love and trying to actually master the art of it. And I just, while I was reading all of this, I just was amazed at how well written everything it is, and he makes it sound so romanticized, even though it was a crazy and I don't know about stressful, but just kind of a crazy time for him. It makes you also kind of want to have experienced that, even though I know we just said that it doesn't sound very fulfilling. It definitely makes me want to experience a summer like that. That sounds like a lot of fun, and it'd be interesting to have gone through all that. And he just has a really good way of writing. I'm very impressed with his words and his sentence structure and everything. It's really remarkable. Okay. Page 16. He's discussing his time with Tyrone. Tyrone showing him his hands, all of the burns, the water-filled blisters, and just how messed up they are. And Bourdain realized he wanted hands like Tyrone's. So he decides to go to the Culinary Institute of America. And honestly, he must have really loved cooking to want to do that after having a moment of huge humiliation in front of all of the Mario, is what he calls it, the Mario cooking staff. A lot of people would just bow out and say, this isn't for me. I think that happens to a lot of people with stand-up comedy. They get up on stage, they bomb that one time. If they get up on stage, it's pretty hard to convince people to do an open mic, but once they do it and they bomb, a lot of people just say, that's it, I'm out. But Bourdain went through a hard experience there, very humiliating, but he was able to stay resilient and continue on through, and look where he got to do all those wonderful things with his life when he continued on his cooking path. So resilience is key, especially if it is something you want to do. It will impress others, and honestly, you'll impress yourself if you keep going and you stay steadfast with it. Okay, so on to page 21. Bourdain's discussing the E-room, the final class before graduating, with the French Chef Bernard. And I just found it funny how almost everywhere you go, and every school or whatever you're doing, there's always like a weed 'em out course. And this was it. This is what got people kicked out of school. If they really didn't want to do something, if they weren't fully committed, they would not survive this cooking class. And I think like a biology student, or like if you're pre-med, you got to take organic chemistry. A lot of people drop out there. For my economics courses, it was this microeconomics course. It was your very first upper division. Ton of people dropped out there. There was a joke where it was the business major is only 8 clicks away. So in order to change your major from economics to business, it only took 8 clicks, and it didn't need to be approved by anyone. And so if you don't want to deal with those harder upper division courses that required more math and a lot more thinking than just what you're accustomed to, it only took 8 clicks. So it's just funny how there's always those courses to truly distinguish who really wants to be there and who does not. And maybe even if you don't want to be there, you could skate by, but you may not necessarily get a great grade. So it's funny how that's kind of universal. Okay. Next is page 22. I loved his relationship with Dimitri and how it transformed into them having the catering business. And I just liked how he is describing it as you against the world. And I know I had a friend like that, and we would do everything together, and it didn't matter, and we could always have a good time and laugh. And I hope everyone finds that. I think most people do. You do find that friend where it doesn't matter what you do, and you just love every moment together. Yeah, I miss those times. But on to page 25. how him and Dimitri had to put on that banquet, and they had that big rounded pot of essentially like the pastry. I forget exactly what it is made of, but it's some sort of doughy pastry thing, and how the boiled fish and that huge pot of soup didn't crack is a miracle. And I thought his line here that says, our crown roast was no problem. It was the blanket that filled our hearts with dread and terror. But God protects fools and drunks, and we were certainly both foolish and drunk much of the time. And I thought it was just funny that he included that God protects fools and drunks. Not always, but it's funny to think about. But anyway, the second chorus is next. I'll see you then.